All right, welcome to episode 33 of the CROM Updates, where I'm working on a definitive CROM Collected comic book. And this is the artist proof. Have some of the preceding bits and pieces that have led me to here, but I'm more excited to share my time today with my collaborator on the Turbo Pit Fighter comic book. Link in the description to that channel where Jake Jacobs and I are working on a comic book called Turbo Pit Fighter. And we have our second teaser out. I just had these printed and we're starting to send these out. And you can get these at kurtbrugel.com. But enough about Turbo Pit Fighter. Jake, how you doing today?
Good. This is going to be an interesting episode. We do this from time to time. Kurt has me in, and we talk right on the air about helping plan his CROM project and getting to the final version of this publication.
Yeah, so you have
Kurt
you
sent me this.
have you have an artist proof. So just inside, I printed out copies for everybody that's been contributing. I have 5 guest artists, and then you are my contributing editor for every one of my Crom the Barbarian reimagined with some of my gray value. You've walked me through some feedback and critiquing, fine tuning art direction. So I'm looking forward to getting something in that way from you today, so I can put my artist proof to rest, make all the adjustments I need to get the final together, so I can now release this to the public.
So beware.
Yes, exactly. So I am
Beware,
very
public.
excited. I'm very excited. Just a real quick history. Back in 2015, I went out looking for a comic book character to work on. I love Conan the Barbarian. I found this old public domain character called Crom the Barbarian by Gardner Fox and John Junta from 1950. Tracked down the original pulps and comic that these were in and reprinted something. Then I turned around, started working on my own Crom the Barbarian stories, 4 of them, in ballpoint pen, because I was really into ballpoint pen at that time. So I put this together. This is sold out. I believe I have like 2 or 3 copies of this left on my store at kurtbrugel.com. But in 2018, I ended up putting a digest together where I collected both of those, and people could then get them, pretty economically from both kurtbrugel.com, GardnerFrancisFox.com, and the new and improved CromTheBarbarian.com, which has a blog and a store assigned to it. So what I went and did is I took these ballpoint pen pages, blew them up to 13 by 19, and much like I've been doing for the um, Turbo Pit Fighter, I've been adding gray value, everything from graphite washes to black, white, and gray paint markers, color pencils. So really, really, really having a great time. But we're going to be looking at the entirety of this book, which is like the player hand guide to the life of Crom the Barbarian as told by and seen by me. And I need some feedback from all of the contributing artists and you, Jake, before I go to final print. So, what do you got for me?
Well, so this is the first time I'm seeing some of this stuff. You got this cover here. I love the Will Eisner
Yeah.
combination of text and picture. It's kind of like montagey. Um, and we got a nice pin up here. Nice clean page here. This shows you some of the art of Kurt Brugel here as he's interpreting this public domain character. You got the sign in page. Um, so one thing that jumps out at me is the Times font. Um, I try to avoid Times font because it's one of the default fonts on everybody's computer, which you know to me sometimes makes it a little ordinary. On the other hand, it's a very it's a very recognizable, legible, very serviceable font. So I don't know. I just wouldn't do it if that was me. I would find a different font. Um, I don't know.
Arial, Arial, or
No,
Helvetica.
I would find a font like Garamond or something a little bit off the beaten path. But that's just to make things just look like they're not just like printed off some printer by because every student in the country is using this turning in their papers, and you just kind of connotate this with like just the ordinary to me. So I don't know if that's that big of a deal, but these are some of my pet peeves.
I'll check it out.
um Here you have the invitation to contribute. So yeah, people should know. There's so many public domain characters out there, most that you probably never heard of, and nobody's ever heard of. You could go into comics have been around for over 100 years. You can go into the 40s, the 50s, any era you want. You could find a character. Maybe you're not good. Maybe you're like into art and inking, but you're not really good at writing. You're not really good at character development. Go find something that's public domain, and you can see how the old strips used to look, and then you could just update it. Here you can see like the night and day between the classic CROM strips of of decades ago, and then Kurt's interpretation here. His update here that he was just talking about. So anybody could do the same thing because public domain characters mean they're in the public domain. Just use them. There's no rights. There's no risk. No one's going to sue you.
And by the
Uh,
way, I'm not claiming ownership to Crom the Barbarian. This is my version of his development towards becoming the dark god for for Conan the Barbarian. So this is the adventure I've placed myself on. But I've noticed, and especially with some of the other guest contributing artists that I have coming forward in the Crom anthology, people have their own ideas, but to be able to work together and collaborate and get things going, whether you work with me or not, I absolutely side with Jake. Crom is out there, and if you love barbarians and just some like good old fashioned romping around, beating up monsters and sorcerers and getting the girl, then he's your man.
right, and Crom the Barbarian was developed by Gardner Fox, who developed the Flash and many other Marvel and DC characters, I should say, and he intersects with Conan in that he was a contemporary of Robert. Gardner Fox was a contemporary of Robert E. Howard, and I'm sure they collaborated over the years.
No, actually, Fox gets started at the end of Robert E. Howard's life. Robert E. Howard takes his life, I think, in 36, and Fox starts writing full time for comics in 37. But as pulp goes, Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard were at the top. So they was very, very, very well known about this. And Fox's favorite sword and sorcery.
So how does Conan come to say Crom every time he drops something on his foot?
That's the god that Robert E. Howard had as the sort of one focus god that Conan would think, but he also did let's say worship or talk to, pray to or ask guidance and help from Ishtar and Mitra, which were two other large gods in predominant gods in the Hyborian age, the age of Conan the Barbarian.
Right. So
I
Robert
think
E.
what
Howard.
the yeah, for Robert E. Howard. But the thing about Crom the Barbarian is to stay away from legality, because a gentleman by the name of um, Glenn Lord, controlled very tightly the estate of Howard's work. They want to do Conan the Barbarian, but they just go ahead and use his guide Crom. They turn him into a blonde. They thin him down a little bit, and Bob's your uncle, and they're off and running. So I think
But
it's kind of interesting.
but just to clarify, Crom was an exclamation that Robert E. Howard
A
wrote
god
into the
is a
code.
god.
Right,
Yep, he
right,
was a god. In the movie, right before he's going to face off with in the cemetery, the Thulsa Dooms, Rexor, and those guys. He says, "I had not, prayed to you, and I don't think you listened. But if you're going to do anything, grant me one thing, grant me vengeance, and if not, to hell with you." Like that's his relationship with his quote unquote God. But as a barbarian, he does whatever the fuck he wants to do.
right. So because you did bring up legality, so Robert E. Howard creates the Conan and the world of Conan, which includes the gods, including a god by the name of Crom. Um, then Gardner Fox comes along and says, "I'm going to take that name of that god and I'm going to make him into a full-fledged barbarian story, which we see here." And I guess in those days, the legality of it was not a concern, or were they contemporaries where he had the permission?
I don't believe they had it. They've had permission at all. And I remember growing up with if you want to steal something, you just have to change that thing 7 times. You have to
Right,
create 7 different separation points, changing black hair to blonde hair. K C Conan to K Conan. He you know what I mean. So if he got dragged into the courts, the judge is basically going to throw it out and say no. They changed 8 elements. It's now no longer that character. It's now a new character, and it just so happens to be pronounced Conan, but with a K. That was the kind of thing I think comic
got it.
books, because nobody was paying money to pay an attorney to advise them on a 10-page comic book story, which you don't even know if there was going to be a second or third.
Right. I wonder about these are the questions that I have
Yeah,
because some bean counter is going to come along and say, "Hey, you use the word Crom. That's the god in the Conan estate." And then Gardner Fox's lawyer said, "No, this is a completely separate barbarian, and we just use the same word. Just a coincidence." So
but there is an ancient god in proper human history called Crom Cronch. So he's an Irish, Scottish, Celtic god who was a bastard. Like he was
right,
like a Loki style kind of god. And so the way pulps were written, especially the way Robert E. Howard went about doing it, was they always leaned back into history. So he appropriated,
right,
but just cut
right.
out the crunch
That's
part of
like
it, and just did the crown part of it.
that's like Stan Lee's
But
going to
we're not
court.
attorneys, so if you
Well,
are getting people
but
to get a little excited about a property, and the best thing to do is cover your bases, but come up with your own version. Work with material and go from there.
yeah,
But
well,
if you were to purchase a copy of my CROM Collected and taken elements out of it and made your own CROM, I would give you a thumbs up. And I'd actually probably even get you to come on the CROM updates and talk about it, because that's really what this project for me is all about, is sharing a passion, which very, 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 very few people have when it comes to sword and sorcery. So
right, just
there's not enough of us to fight and argue over something like that.
right, just to make the contrast. The Crom is public domain, but Conan is not. So that's why I was
Conan the Cimmerian is. Conan the
Conan.
Barbarian is copywritten by Conan International Properties, but Conan the Cimmerian, if you write and draw your stories off of the public domain weird tales, that's where Conan the Cimmerian, he wasn't called Conan the Barbarian until the movie, or the comic book, I should say.
Right,
Um,
the comic
the um, the uh, uh, um,
'70s.
the lapse of that property in the pulps is now public domain. But once again, I'm not an attorney. There are quite a lot of people who have been propagating and republishing and dealing with those there. But I thought about it and I chose not to because I'd rather not get in a position where I end up spending a lot of my time and energy into something and then it does get entangled by my own buffoonery and lack of legality and consciousness
Yeah,
of it.
that's the
But
thing.
be careful
That's
out there. Be careful out there.
Well, that's the
You
thing
know,
that's happening with Steamboat Willie right now because eventually all characters will age out into the public domain. Conan the Cimmerian, which was a prose character who appeared in pulp uh, publications, has aged out into the public domain. But Conan the Barbarian comic character, which debuted on I think 1970 or 71 from Marvel Comics, and then became a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, is completely different, and that's going to be 1970 plus 98 years, which is a whole
right,
different ballgame. Same
right.
thing with Mickey Mouse. If you use the iteration that was Steamboat Willie, that visual, those characters that were introduced in that year, then you should be safe to use those. But if you're going to
Once
try to
again,
use,
we're not attorneys and we're not we're not endorsing said behavior. But look, just to get you to swing back around here, two things I
yeah,
want to ask you, Jake. The feeling of the book, the paper, the patina antiqueness. What do you think? Because I used a little bit of sorcery. I want to see if you can kind of see what I did
yeah,
in order to
the
get the feel.
paper, yeah, the paper. So I
And
was going to go on.
newsprint feel. That newsprint
Yeah,
feel.
yeah. The paper's a little grayish. It's a little textured, right? This is like the pulp inside the paper, or the green inside the paper. It's visible, right?
Right.
Um, right? Because you didn't print this on there, or did you? Did you put a halftone dot on there?
I
Is this new?
did. So I put a
Oh,
10%. I scanned a piece of newsprint, a
right.
big sheet of it, and then put
Tricky.
it as a layer underneath the page. So whatever the
Yeah.
page is, like this art, it went 10%. And then I multiplied the screen so that all the white gets washed out to that 10% gray.
It's
Then,
noise.
get this. I have for the print on demand company I use, one of two, lulu.com, they have a cream color selection for print
Right.
paper. So now the paper has got this yellow, and now I've dirtied it with a gray screen on the
So
each of the
this is
pages.
yellow. This is
Yep.
yellowish paper that I have here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
Very
Yeah. So
interesting.
and I want to say I'm over the moon in feeling the success of that because straight up things have worked. Now, my second question to you, because you spent a lot of time with me giving art direction on these stories and me figuring out how to make some sense. And I know you shared a little bit of like dismay and frustration about how I was going to make things happen. How does my gray value system in the way I put them on the pages do you feel have translated here?
Well, let's get fine tuned into that. So I do like that. I like the 10% trick. I like the screen or the noise, that you
Yeah,
introduce.
yeah,
10% is an interesting amount because, you know, printer pressure may vary. So it might go to 5, it might go to 15. You
right,
never know.
right, right,
Um, but you're right on that, like really, really like fine line there.
right,
Where it gets a little weird some places is some of these margins, right? Where it looks like it's not quite going to the edge, but then it's thinner here. I don't know if that's a big deal, but
That's definitely
you
the
know,
printer. That's the printer and the trim.
right?
Because
And
the binding, I don't know if yeah, they're doing in little, sections. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'd say there's probably 10 sections in there that printing it and then bringing it together, and then they've got to chop it. But you'll notice I gave a good gutter, a healthy gutter. So I moved the
Yeah.
pages out a little bit, so it's not like in the center and then you have this kind of large blinding mass. And if you end up getting further into the book, you don't have to crack the spine in order to see pretty much the whole
Yeah.
entire page.
Right.
Even
And
I
I,
think even on these pages, it's not that bad. There's a little tightness in the gutter, but as a magazine kind of feel, I was going for illustration
yeah.
wise.
So here, it does get a little close into the gutter here. I don't know if it's worth it, but kick that over, maybe kick the whole thing over here, kick the whole thing out here. Here it's a full bleed. So whenever you're full bleeding on the right, you're gonna you're gonna
Yeah,
be
it's going to
using
go
it.
all the way in. Yeah.
I would shrink this down and kick all this over. I would make the gutter a little more uniform to what you have here. This is a good
Oh,
half
okay.
inch, 3/4, and it looks like if this is the size and format that you want to be out on the edges, so that you don't have to abuse the paper so much and crack the spine so much. That's a big deal, especially if someone's flipping through one of these and it's not their book. Um, like I don't know how many times I've been like in a bookstore and it's like, well, I can't really read that, and then you
Crack the
hear this,
spine.
you hear it's like you look behind you, see if the guy's looking at you. Uh, all that. But yeah, just getting through that. You get first here into this original art and this original story. You have a lot going on with the gray values, right? You really liven that up. We spoke a bunch about the courier font or the typewriter font.
Yeah.
You're getting here to the next one, so we got back-to-back stories here. Interesting that you didn't like put a chapter marker in between them, right? Like you have
I
these kind of like you have these kind of like chapter marker pages here
right.
going between the sections that you create versus the existing stuff, but then you don't do anything between your 6 pagers or 8 pagers, right?
Yeah, I did play around with the CROM stories, so I did do a blow up and had it as a breaker. I was a slave to the page count. So this is a 140 page count. So that means,
Uh-huh.
for the division of labor, then it stays together. So I would have to add another 4 pages, which I could do. It's not really going to impact the cost. I just kind of got curious. There was somebody, one of the other guest artists made a similar comment about that. But they did say this. There was a flow that changed. Yeah, this one here. He says the now the page drops. I would have to try to set it up so this worked really well. So here's the fight with the giant. Crom gets knocked out and he's laying down here. Then on the page turn, he wakes up. Where in my previous comic, this one, it's on the same page. So he wakes up, and then on the other page, he's knocked out, and then on the other page, it paints it. So I kind of won something out of that in the way of impact storytelling wise. And
Yeah,
it
well,
kind of
that's the question. If
chunks it
you're
more.
that's the question. If you're planning lefty righty as you're making the art,
Yes, I
so I
am.
get
I am. I am.
right.
I
So
am.
you want to keep it as planned, and sometimes you need to put a page in or take a page out. So
Correct.
that
But you
all
have to
happens.
do
All
it.
right.
You have to do it in fours. That's the thing. Is every time I had to make one of these moves, I had to play it out that if I was going to then adjust from, let's say, 136 to 140, I had to add 3 more pages in there. So
Unless you,
that's how these stories, the original, got these pages. These just
right,
blow up. So you could also
unless
see.
you sometimes if you want to add a page, you could just take a page out somewhere, but you
This is
also
true
don't.
too. This is
But
true
you also
too.
don't want to mess up your lefty righties, right? So I
And my
mean, like,
flow, yeah, just the overall flow, because this is in 3 parts. There's the youthful CROM, the adventurous CROM, which is the old Gardner Fox, John Junta, Jack Katz, and then I have a transforming CROM, which is a prose story originally written in 1935 by Gardner Fox for Planet Stories called Warlock of Sharador. And I just altered it to meet more of the sword and sorcery criteria, added the CROM elements to it. And then because the ending is super shady, I should say. It's a very cloaky kind of like place to be as a character, which I feel is going to help me transition him to that dark, brooding, angry god, from this happy-go-lucky, playful, barbarian kid.
So there you're talking about, taking public domain works and not just using them, but also altering them, right? That's another
Yes.
part. That's another part of the thing. You have that where it might be somebody updating, for modern days, where they take something old and they make it, new technology or something, and then on the worst case scenario, something like Winnie the Pooh becomes a serial killer, or you have those too, which are all fair game too. So let's get through these because we've done episodes on all these.
Yeah.
It looks nicer, bigger, I think. And it all kind of coheres, going from the one to the
Good
next to the next
reduction.
one.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think the reduction is pretty tight. There are a couple of areas, like this area here looks a little too everything's equal. So I might
yeah.
consider kind of darkening this guy down a bit, maybe lightening him up somehow. But one of the other things I feel I had a really good success with was masking out these characters. I do this like 3 times, 4 times, and then shooting it with white spray paint out of the can. So literally just hitting it with some of this liquid text, and then the effect, with that fuzzy edge is just it translated really well and I'm very happy with it.
Have you ever messed
So.
around with that window stuff? It's not as permanent as spray paint because spray paint is like usually it's like enamel.
Oh, it's like a
Um,
chalk based thing, right?
yeah, well, I'm not sure what it is because over the years I'm sure the formula's changed, but I have a can here of it's like you're supposed to just put a temporary like Merry Christmas on the window,
Oh,
you
yes,
know,
yes.
and
It
then
is. It's chalk.
it yeah, and then it cleans off in a,
Yeah.
in a pretty easy way. So I
Yeah,
wonder what that's like on paper.
not a lot of permanency on that. That's the only problem. Is it would just like chalk unless you hit it with like fixative. So then you
Right.
sprayed it with this, which is like basically spray paint. That's all spray paint is
Yeah,
that it's
right.
got
I mean,
pigment
all
with
of
a
the above.
fixative and you know gets
All
down
I'm
on it.
thinking about all the above because you get the spray effect, but then you could even like move it around with a brush or do stuff, before you
Right.
fix
It's a
it.
great idea. If I run across something in the discount racks, I'll probably pick it up.
Yeah. So here we get to our first break. Here we get you. This is like section break. We're going into adventurous crime, and then you have this all this text written from 2015 where you're introducing the old Crom stuff.
Yep.
Um,
The
yeah,
origins.
this is pretty good, right? So now we're getting into this, and I noticed that you're keeping the baseline pretty gray, right? You could even see here on the edge. This is a reprint, but it's not like you're trying to brighten things up.
No,
Um,
no.
and there's kind of a compromise. You might lose some highlights. I think pretty much a lot of this stuff is just like set values. There isn't too much variable, isn't too much variable values where you're going to lose any highlights. But you do have this, pretty visible difference between the paper, which already has its yellow and gray,
Yep.
versus the gray of the reprinted comics. So, um, and here even like register marks are off and stuff. when Marvel or DC is doing all these reprint compilations, they fix all this kind of stuff up, and
Fuck that.
they put new tones
to
in.
me, to me, to me, the beauty is this is the best one in my. This is what I love is the misregistration. I mean, this
Yeah,
stuff is just this is magic and
yeah,
gold
yeah.
at
Like
the
Marvel
same
will
point. And
blow
I'm
that
always
up,
trying to figure out how to get this into my art. And so,
I mean, the problem is when it's full color because then you get the moire patterns really bad.
that's even
You
better for
know,
me. I'm
yeah,
totally down with
unless you
that.
want that, unless you blow it up on purpose, man. Because now there's a filter for that, right? Right. So you can see here, what it looks like if you do blow that up, and you can see how crude the masking was, right? This was somebody cutting a film of
Yeah,
rubylith, and the printer was off like maybe a 16th of an inch, and that's what made comics great. It was just that human
beautiful.
touch.
It's art.
So we're moving here through the old Joy G artwork here.
JG.
Um, oh, is that JG? Okay. Right, that's Gunta, right?
That's John Junta. Yep.
Yeah.
Who I think is
Right.
more, as time goes on, I become more and more aware how much he was probably, if not greater enthusiast for this sort of stuff as or of from Fox, and so I'm sure he was just as much a pusher to the publisher to constantly put this stuff together and get it out there. So he's just as equal, if maybe not a little bit more, a contributor to the Crom mystique. Obviously because he's taking the artist approach to it. So
So here we're seeing, the going through the eras. You're going here, from one era to the next. Here, this is the era of the typeset dialogue. That
yeah,
not just the word balloons, but the
yep,
narration.
yep.
And this was when they had these machines like I think they were phototypositors they were called, but they could just
Yeah, put
set the
somebody out of
type.
work.
Well, yeah, I mean the person's probably just working on a machine now instead of
It could have
doing
been
it
even
by.
John Junta. It could have just been John Junta taking advantage of the new technology and saving him the time for having a handwritten letter, the comic
It
book.
could have been right. Yeah, I mean you no longer need a lettering artist per se. You just need
Mm-hmm.
a typesetter, somebody that's got to make everything fit. And there probably is a little bit of cut and paste here. I noticed these exclamation points. They look like they look like they're all exactly the same, but they look like an added character. See,
Yeah,
like
I
here,
agree.
I see a difference here in this exclamation point, and then
Wow, never saw
all
that
these other ones.
before.
Yeah, all these other ones look
Wow.
like the same. I know. Well, you want to get upset.
Woo!
Let's talk. But yeah, moving on through here, you see a whole new era of art. Is this getting into the 70s now?
This is Jack Katz, and
Yes.
this was an old Zangar for Skywall that I just bought a copy of the comic book, and then in Photoshop took out Zangar and put in Crom because
Oh, okay.
the story's written by Fox, but it's illustrated by Jack Katz, but it reads less as a Tarzan and more as a barbarian tale. I mean, just a
Right.
crazy, awesome like barbarian tale. So and then and he was a Zangar's a redhead, and I just had to put a screen over there to make him yellow. So I took
Right.
him.
So here, right now, this looks like it might use a little bit of brightening or brightness and contrast. Like in Photoshop, I would take the what is it the curves tool and then try and drag the light and the low values a little bit higher, because if this was fully colorized and it's going to grayscale, some of it ends up being dark. This panel ends up kind of being dark, the line here. um so I don't know, that's a suggestion. I don't know if you want to run that through Photoshop, but
Yeah,
that's what I would
I'll
do.
give it a shot. Let's see what happens.
Right, like this page is not, it's not as pronounced, right? Maybe because there was lighter values on there to begin with. But it's always an interesting look here. And we're getting into some other art, right? This kind of like longer art. This is where we're entering this kind of like heavy metal era, right? Or maybe
Yeah,
not
yeah. I
yet.
mean, yeah, I think in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, the whole sword and sorcery thing just really, really blows up. It's also, I think, tied to the hippie movement with their connection
Psych-
to J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and The
right.
Hobbit and stuff. So there's a lot of Middle Earth,
Yeah.
barbarism, medieval, Renaissance
It
festivals going on.
reminds me a little bit
The
of
hippies.
a reminds me a little bit of Art Nouveau, in there
Yeah,
too. There's a
yeah.
lot of design work
The
here and a lot of the
romantics. Yeah.
in the armor. So this all wraps up here.
Yep.
And did you have to substitute all these crumbs from the other
Yep.
game?
Yep.
Wow. Good job. Yeah. Okay.
Not a bad
Uh,
job, huh?
Not bad. Here we're getting into a pin-up, and then we're in the new section. So I have to ask where this lettering came from. Crom
I
and the
asked I asked ChatGPT, I think it was, to write me in a medieval fantasy art style, Crom and the Warlock of Shardor. And this, other than this, I added, popped up. And I was like, ooh, I could work with this. Now, what you see is not what I got. So I used it as a template to be able to build on. This is his sword hilt, cross guard, I should say. I added that element in. And then as I went through and inked, I started, pulling my own aesthetic into it and knocking things out and bringing
Now
things
you
in.
say Chat GBT, but that's a text only format, right? Did you mean some other AI
No, no,
visual
it does.
platform?
No, it does images. It's been doing images forever. I
Oh, I
mean,
don't
for a
have
long
that.
time. Yeah, you can ask it
I
to
don't have.
generate images. Oh, yeah, and text. Yeah. As a matter of
I
fact,
see.
on our YouTube channel, Jake, we do three men in a comic with Dan Snook from Rave Sensation. That title card was generated by ChatGPT.
Huh. So you just go right to Chat GBT and you say
And
generate
I
a
say
picture.
generate an image of, and then you just start describing it as best you can. And a lot of times it does it within like 1, 2, or 3 times. I find it at this point, the more you try to become detailed about what you want without doing things on the outside of it on your own to get more specific, it starts messing up. So you got to really take what it gives you. You know what I mean? And I just look for something that's cohesive. This was like it gave me a sketchy idea. And then I was able to just print it out as a 10% gray on a piece of 8.5 by 11 cardstock. So it's to size. And then just took my brush and pens and went to town.
Wow, interesting. So, yeah, I'm wondering
Technologies,
how many.
baby. Technologies.
So this is why there's like a couple of extra
Yep.
limbs
I
in
love it.
here. Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
it's like you have to kind of weave yourself in there to see what's being said. And it also has this like alien type of like ancient font type without it being too like tied to something. You know what I mean? Like what do you call it? Like a Celtic knot, or you know what I mean? Like those types of images you'll see in Sword
yeah.
and Sorcery, which has been overplayed. So this really gave me something I think was aesthetically pleasing as a title page turner to then go into Crom and the Warlock of Shardor.
Well, come to learn. Come to learn. Interesting. Um, so this is the new prose that you were talking about.
Yes, this was printed as in a comic book format when I did this comic book. So I did a reprint of the original the original Warlock of Shardor from Planet Stories 1953. Then I did my Crom version of it, and then I printed this out. So I had three kind of comic books, two of them being just prose inside with some illustration. And then went to town to some comic book shows and started purveying these. And then later a year or two later, less than 2 years, a little over a year, ended up getting this together. So
So yeah, my feedback here is I think you do need to move these away from the gutters. I think it's better if
yeah,
you move them away from the gutters.
yeah, it's going to
Here
be
you're doing
tough.
here you're oh really? We can't you?
Well, the whole thing is what I did was is I took a Word doc, then I took white blocks. I had one block this shape and one block this shape, and then I inset it, and then of course sent the parameters around it for the inset for the illustrations. But what I did was I played with the scaling in order to get 36 pages,
Yeah.
right? 30, yeah,
Yeah,
36
but you don't have to
pages.
change any of that. No, you don't have to
Well,
you
oh,
don't
you're
have to
saying
redo it.
then shrink the page,
Yeah,
shrink
turn it
them,
to art. Yeah, turn it to art, and then make it the
but I
ninety
might
one
lose the
percent.
bleed. But for like these four, I would lose that bleed. I love the bleed. This
Well,
also bleeds off as
yeah, for
well
that
as
page,
down here. So you can see when the Dogen warlocks talk. I then no, it's only these that bleed off, which are the
yeah.
part markers, the
What I would
chapter
do would
indicators.
be I would leave the bleed like you say. I would
Okay,
take the so we're on this side, right? I would leave the bleed like you say. I would take this artwork. You do have it bleeding on the left a little here too, but I would take this artwork, shoot it down to 90%, and just kick it over. Same
all
thing
right,
here. Take the whole thing, shoot it 91%, kick it over more to the edge. You will get a tiny bit more on the top and bottom that you center. But this is pretty basic because you're just centering an image here. I also wonder if you have a healthy space away from text to the image here. When you're reading on these columns, do you want a little bit more white space? Is it just more comforting to the eye? Um, I guess it depends. You don't have anything too dark here, but yeah, I would just try and get out of the gutter like another
okay.
quarter inch, maybe third of an inch. And this brings you through all these pages, all these characters,
So
right?
just to say how I did this is each of these illustrations is of a character element that's on the page. So I don't
Right.
title who this is. So when you read the flow of the text, you should be able to marker this person as that character. So then when you keep reading the story, you kind of hold an image of that character, or like the crystal is in the story and the element,
Yeah,
and
it
then the
matches.
characters and stuff. So it was
It
less
matches.
about trying to action orient, you know, comic book in a way. It was more clinical spot illustration, I should say.
Right. So, and also you should. It's too late now, but you should also check what they call these orphans here, right? If before you finalize
Yeah,
your text
yeah,
flow.
yeah. I did.
Well,
I did
this
my
happens.
best. I did my best to try to get him out of there, but it just became way too much. I just
It
the
happens. It
program I
happens in
use
publishing.
the program I use is Open Office Word, like it's Word
Yeah.
Doc, and it's not. It has the parameters, but it's like you tweak up here, and then 5 pages later you lose. It gets really really weird.
Well, yeah, that's why I
So,
love Quark because
oh yeah, well I don't have
you
that
know,
anymore, and I'm
because
not going
Quark
to
have
pay them. Yeah, I'm not
the
going to
text
pay for the.
flow. Like yeah, because if you lose it one place, you get it the other because everything's
It's
all linked together.
Exactly. So, I mean, I just, like I said, one of my aesthetics that I'm going for is a real down and dirty, DIY, almost a magazine, if you will, style to this, than trying to create a professional for magazine distribution in Barnes and Nobles or your local smoke shop.
Yeah. No,
Though
I'm excited.
I think this would be interesting to see in a local Barnes and Nobles or a smoke shop.
Well, maybe Forbidden Planet, because those are big chains. I guess it depends on the whims of the buyer. But
Exactly. I
if
mean,
you, if you,
the cover is going to have to catch them more than anything. So
so here, yeah, so you go pretty. consistently here. You have this whole section here. Hopefully, you get the people, into some old-fashioned reading, right? Um,
Yes.
I I love the idea of combining text with illustrations. I
Me
can't
too.
wait when we do our Substack to
Yes.
come out with print versions of it with all zined up, pages.
Yep.
Um, Here, you got to be careful that the knockout type. There's a couple of things. Number one is, does it affect the other side of the page? And it doesn't look like it does. So that's good. If the paper's too thin,
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah. I was
these
worried
black
about
lines
that.
can mess up the other side. The other thing is just the disappearing text. Maybe it pays to take all this white text and bold it because it
Ooh.
gets thinner and thinner. With the
Ooh.
with the black background.
That could end up bumping me around a little bit. We'll see what happens.
Right. Well, this might just be for future, consideration, but
Yeah, I'll
if
still I'll
again,
still open a file and give myself the opportunity to see
yeah,
what
because if you
happens.
convert all this,
It's a great suggestion.
if you convert it all to high res bitmap, you could very easily just have Photoshop use the minimum maximum filters and bump up, the boldness even without any kind of text commands, right?
Right.
Just
Right.
looking at it as art. So we're going through here, right? And here you got the rivers of white. I know this is unavoidable with Word because Word doesn't worry about aesthetics, But if you have these, what I would probably do would be, take them in Quark and then spread the letters out so
Don't
that they're
have
a little
Quark.
more. I
I know
know.
you will, because you still have Quark.
I
But
still have Quark. I know. Well, I mean, like, don't these other programs think about this? InDesign, are we going backwards?
yeah, but there's a layer of education that has to come with it, and
Right,
like I said, there's a DIY layer, and then there's the mega professional layer, and the mega professional layer takes education. So you've got to make
right.
that decision on timing. It's fine.
Yes.
It's fine for the editor to say, "Hey, I want you to show me a version." You know what I mean? Since I'm getting paid,
Well, you're
sitting around.
asking somebody that I'm a little OCD when it comes to
No,
typesetting because I
oh
did
no, no,
I
no!
did
I
it for a
love it.
long time.
I love it because
Um,
I do take it upon myself when I hear critique, and I love critique. I love it, love it, love it. So don't
so
say
here, so I love some of your illustrations. I have a feeling that these shot down to be really tight, right?
Oh yeah, these are
Um,
eight. These are 7 by 7 inch illustrations. So they
right,
were about this big, and then they got shot down to about 3 3/4 no
yeah,
three
that
three and
really
three
shows.
and a third or something. But yeah, it's. I used to do this all the time for
On
magazines and
this
books and
one,
stuff.
this I get distracted. This is a nice piece of art, but you can see the texture of the marker.
I'm gonna put another layer of grays in there. I printed this on. You're the first one to make a notice of it, which I was pretty much banking on. But I wanted to see it in print before I just judged it and then eliminated. But you're right. You're
Right.
right. It
No,
needs
yeah,
a.
as I look at
But
it,
I like the
because
starkness. Like I gotta learn. I gotta keep all this stark and his hand stark, and then this like area here
yeah, I
stark.
mean,
So.
if this was meant to be like the thatch of a hut or something, then it would work. But
Right.
all I
Right.
hear in
Right.
my mind is the squeak of the marker, right? Like, so I mean, I would have fun with it. Like, not only could you do like a caption here, but you could also just do a splatter here. You could
Yes.
do,
Yeah.
you
Wash it
could
a bit.
you
Yeah.
could use
That's what I'm
Photoshop
thinking.
tools and your airbrush
Yep.
tools and all that, or you could
Yeah.
use your magic wand and do stuff, or you could
Now it's
just
all by
splatter.
hand. I don't do
Yeah,
Photoshop editing.
right,
It's all
right,
by hand.
right. So so there's that, and yeah, so nice illustrations coming down here. I see where you have the little gray. I noticed this. You have the little gray frame here because otherwise it would look a little bit,
Yeah,
loopy.
it was left from the printout. So I was like, well, when I get in there, I can see if I want to just take it out. But I saw it, I was like, once again, just leave it alone. Let's see what happens. And I like
Because
it.
you're
I
not,
like it a lot.
yeah, because Word is using like these boxes to do the
Yeah,
text run around.
Yeah.
But really, look, if you really look, you could have a more contoured runaround if this was a Quark or something like
Oh,
that.
sure, sure, sure,
Um,
sure. Yep, yep.
yeah, and I don't know if those things are better, because if you get too close, then you gotta increase the runaround. But those are all the tools that are at your disposal when you have something like Quark. Here, you really getting into these nice illustrations. I love these illustrations.
Thank you.
Um, you know, each illustration is also an opportunity for a caption, but you're not doing
Nah,
that.
nah, nah,
Yeah.
nah. Like I said,
But
the
what?
illustration's playing its center part of like kind of attracting you to, because okay, here's the speculation. I have attention deficit disorder and dyslexia, so when I read pages, I kind of start in an area, and if there's an illustration, I kind of read it, and then I look for like eyeball, and I'm like, ooh, let's see if there's an eyeball. Oh, look here, Eye of LaFlame. Okay, well, let me start reading from there. You know what I mean? And then I might come back. Oh,
Yeah.
here it is again. You know what I mean? I kind of create more of a image sense to the page than just a literal start here, read, acquire information, keep moving. So I wanted to kind
Right.
of promote that to other people that are in the comics realm, collector or such, and give that to them.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. There's a nice action scene right here. I wonder if you ever might break format. Then this looks like it could be like a little bit bigger, but you have the template that you're sticking with.
Yeah.
So the prose ends right on this
Yep.
this kind
Yeah,
of
and
like song play.
I'm probably gonna do a little bit of that washy stuff too, like you suggested for the other illustration for this one.
Interesting stuff. Now we're getting to the guest artist section.
Yeah, so just let me promote each one at a time. I reached out to five artists that I had been following on Instagram, and all five of them said yes. And the first one was David Molina, fantastic artist. I encourage everybody to go to his Instagram. He just does some wonderful, just freestyle paneling and everything. And we're actually working on a story for CROM Anthology, which will be the follow up to CROM Collected. Well, he'll do the pencils and layouts, and I will do an ink version of it. Um, then the New Zealand base drawn sword. His work. This is to size. This is to size. This is an A3, A4 paper in New Zealand, and this is how he works. And I have been just mesmerized by his work. He's not on Instagram. He does have a YouTube channel, but he also has a blog and posts his art quite often there. So I've been following him for a couple years, as a matter of fact, and finally reached out to him, and he did this great Crom the Barbarian. And then Ken Landgraf, of course. I'm a big fan of Ken Landgraf. Took a chance, got a commission from him. Then Adam Dodds is a guy on Instagram I've been following. He does Doodly Gobbledygook, and it's just his sort of like colliding of like inking
Yeah.
textures. And I just said, hey, man, wouldn't it be kind of neat? And he's all, give it a shot. And man, I ended up with just this really wild
Yeah.
piece
This
here.
is this is this is definitely straight out of the
It's very psychedelic.
late '60s, '70s
He's
underground
great.
psychedelic.
Adam's great.
Yeah.
And then Jason Schoonover, right when I came about to ask him, he went to a local Cleveland art museum, or the Cleveland Art Museum in South Carolina, and he did a doodle of a after Caravaggio Renaissance painting, David and the Head of Goliath, and he thought that was a kind of cool jumping off point to turn David into Crom, and then of course you got the Head of Goliath, who we don't know it is. Once again, a wonderful website. You see QR codes throughout this book. This book is very what did they used to call it back in the 90s? What was that? What they used to, not multicultural, it was interactive. Yeah, interactive, I think it was. So,
Yeah.
um, So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
and so
Jason
each
was
of
on our comics that
yeah,
influence. There's a
he's coming back. So each book, each comic artist, guest artist, gets a cover version. So a virgin cover version for the Crom release, and for a limited time, the month of August is looking like what that time period is going to be. I'm going to release, and people will be able to make purchases for the Conan, Crom the Barbarian comics. But you'll have the option of getting the cover of your choice by one of the guest artists who will also be contributing to the Crom anthology. But more information will be to come. We've definitely gone over the 45-minute mark. We're at the end. We like to keep these bite sized. But here's the most important part: open call for collaborations. As I stated in the beginning, I don't claim or want to possess the ownership of Crom. I know of other people out there that have Crom going on, and I'm willing and able to play in a forum which I have established. My follow up is going to be Crom the Anthology, because I do have other stories. I have also found the other people working on stories that I've approached and see if they would like to contribute to it. But the Crom Anthology is going to be something that's in the mix of heavy metal magazine and Savage Sword of Conan in feel. So it's still going to stay at a high page count. Probably this is 140. I'm probably going to try to get up to about 200 pages. But QR code to go to my website, kurtbrugel.com, to get more information, fill out something, and get that conversation started. But I'm all about it. And then I couldn't put anything in that didn't promote you and I's Turbo Pit Fighter, which QR code to our YouTube channel, which is the place where every Sunday we get together and work on our pages. So this page is going to be replaced by the updated page that you sent, because it did cut off. And so this page will get replaced by this page.
right.
And then this is a nice pen. This is one of the first pencil sketches, which was used for the collected Crom the Barbarian scratch board. So
Yeah.
that was the pencil preliminary I did, and then that was that. But
So yeah, I don't know if you want to include like maybe something here that says following page includes
oh, good
turbo,
point. Yeah.
because otherwise you're like, what the hell is this doing here, right? Yeah, so you or maybe wrap it up here. I don't know. You could even put a caption here on the pages themselves, but you say this is the other project, or don't be confused why there's a pit fighter in the middle of the barbarian world. But yeah, just clarity. I always I try to approach this in the perspective of a potential viewer, and ask the questions that they might ask, and then
Thank you.
I talk about minuscule typographical details. So,
Right.
but it's good to see Jason in here. It's good to see David Molina's really good. Kenny Landgraf's amazing. I might darken up some of these blacks, so they go full rich black. And then I got to do my Crom pinup for one of these upcoming.
Love it. You heard it here, people. You heard it here. Oh boy, I can't wait to get my hands on that. But Jake, I can't thank you enough. I always say this: you are a blessing in my life, because you take care of half of the work that I would have to do on my own. So collaborating with you, having started on Turbo Pit Fighter over 2 years ago, has been, like I said, a great blessing and a joy. And for you to contribute and spend the time with me to give me the feedback on my Crom project, I really can't thank you enough, other than to continue being your friend and the other half of our Turbo Pit Fighter channel. So.
Yeah, well, there may be a time when I ask you to help me on laying out some stuff. I mean, definitely, we're definitely working together on a
Oh,
couple of different
absolutely.
things. Turbo is
Absolutely.
not just a comic; it is a world, and
Yes.
And we're a podcast channel with a lot going on. We have flip throughs, we have guest appearances, and who knows what's around the corner. We're definitely going to promote CROM. We're definitely going to promote either of our different side projects and the side projects of all of our people in our network. So jump on in, people. The water's fine.
Awesome. Well, once again, Jake, thank you. And I will see you next Sunday on Turbo Pit Fighter. So take care and I'll see
I'll
you.
be there, God willing.